Science shows the most attractive quality in another person is not their appearance or their success. It is how safe your nervous system feels in their presence. Research on attraction and nervous system safety shows that what humans are ultimately drawn to in another person, beyond appearance, beyond status, beyond all of the surface qualities, is the felt sense of safety their nervous system produces. The quality of being able to exhale in someone's presence, of your shoulders dropping, of your breath deepening, of the monitoring stopping, and genuine presence becoming available. That felt sense is not just pleasant, it is one of the most powerful draws available to the human nervous system. Research on polyvagal theory and social engagement shows that the autonomic nervous system is continuously scanning other people for safety cues through voice, eye contact, facial expressions, body language. And when those cues indicate genuine safety, when the other person's nervous system is regulated, non-threatening, and genuinely present, your own system responds with a deep opening.
Okay, so when it comes to being vulnerable with yourself, the process of being vulnerable with yourself is simply exposing yourself to the truth of who you are. Now, this may seem simple, maybe if you're not fully understanding or comprehending what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is the most hardest thing for a human being to do. There is nothing more difficult than to expose the self to the self. The truth is incredibly dysregulating. The truth has the power to provide people with mental breakdowns. The truth can literally destroy your psyche, destroy your nervous system, destroy your ego in many, many ways. All right. And so the truth of the matter is most of us completely blind ourselves to the truth we're not ready to accept, the truth we're not ready to internalize. All right. So if I was to get you to imagine a dark room, and in this dark room, like a shadowy room as well, like a shadowy room. And in this dark room, there are little specks of light. Those specks of light reflect your consciousness, elements of the truth that you are happy to expose yourself to. And maybe some elements of the truth that you're not happy to expose yourself to, but regardless, those elements of light reflect the elements of truth that you are conscious to. And in this life as a man, your journey, when I talk about embarking on a masculine journey to independence and 100% vulnerability of yourself, your journey in this life is to try to remove all darkness and have that room filled with light. Okay, this is the process of exposing yourself to all of the truths. When you come face to face with the truth that you cannot handle, that you cannot bear, you cannot process, you cannot internalize, you push that to the side. The conscious mind is incredibly powerful. It has the ability to genuinely push a truth out of the conscious psyche, right? You cannot deal with this type of information right now, all right? And so you have to pull it into the side. And what you do is you integrate that into the darkness. You integrate that into the shadow, okay? And the truth of the matter is, our ability to do this, it's something that we should only really be doing in our childhood, because when we are children, when we are young, we are actually defenseless. We are way too powerless to withstand the full truth and the full extent of our reality. This is the reason why we lie to our children. This is the reason why we create stories for our children, tell children about Santa Claus and about the Tooth Fairy, and we wrap children up in fantasy wrapped bubbles. We also wrap women up in fantasy wrapped bubbles as well, because they too are unable to withstand the full extent of reality. Most men are unable to withstand the full extent of reality. And this is the reason why, in order to be felt as masculine to others, not to perform masculinity, but in order to be felt as masculine to others, you need to have exposed yourself to a great deal of truth. In our childhood, we do not have a sword and we do not have a shield. So we are really unable to slay dragons. All right. Some of us were able to slay certain dragons in our childhood. I slayed certain dragons in my childhood, but then the rest of those dragons, it's not something that we can slay. All right. And if anything, in many, many ways, it's not actually something that we can really defend ourselves against either, especially when we have malevolent forces around us, when we have people with evil, devious, calculated intentions, manipulators, when we have these people around us, people who present themselves to be our loved ones, but they actually have nefarious planning for us in the background, when we have been exposed to these things, the ego does its very, very best to create belief systems to protect you. To create belief systems to protect you. So what it will do, it will emit those harmful truths about your environment, about other people, about yourself. It will emit those harmful truths about you, and it will integrate it into the shadow, and it will replace it with a belief system. This is the reason why I'm always talking to you guys about your judgments and your belief, because 9 times out of nearly all of you, all right, your beliefs and your judgments are actually built on top of a core belief that is a lie. It is a lie because your ego created this lie to protect your psyche, all right? You need to continue running and participating and operating in the world. The ego will create this belief system to protect your nervous system. And we all have these core beliefs that we created in our childhood, all of us. Not only that, but also another thing that happens in your childhood is, in order to turn you into a cog that is going to fit into the wider machine, what we call society, your best characteristics, you had to force those things into the shadow. It's actually a part of culture, primary socialization and secondary socialization. This is actually what a lot of social orientation is, right? Your sharp edges that have the potential to make other people feel uncomfortable. Your sharp edges that have the potential to disrupt certain systems that you were born into, right? You were forced to abandon those things and pull it into the shadow. Right, this is the reason why so many of you guys are unable to give yourself permission to do the things that you know you need to do in this life, because the ability to grant yourself permission to do things, it was taken away from you by your parents, right? They granted you permission to do things. Okay, so that natural ability, and depending on how powerful your spirit was as a child, right, the more effort your caregivers has to put in to eliminate these qualities that you have. As a man, your aggression, for example, your aggression and your sexuality, these things are unacceptable to the places that you're born into. So you're forced to put these things into the shadow as well. All right. And all of your other qualities. This is the reason why when you want to find out your purpose, when you want to find out your why, you need to go back into your childhood, go back into the shadow, right? And you have to reintegrate, you have to reconnect to what your highest passions were, what your highest excitements were, what were the things that moved you and breathed life into you as a child. All right, you have to go and sit in that darkness, sit in that truth until you can find it, right? And reintegrate these things back into your character.
If you want to figure out exactly who you are and what you're meant to do, you have to refer back to your childhood obsessions. Whenever you feel lost or confused about what you should be doing with your life, you just got to go back to what you loved as a kid, what you were naturally interested in before people told you what you should be interested in. And I promise you, there is something there. I promise. Most people are so caught up looking forward and trying to find their answers for what should I do next, what's my next step, when they should be looking backwards. Because I'm telling you, like, I was obsessed with Power Rangers as a kid. I always wanted to be a Power Ranger. And like one day I looked down, I'm like, what? I'm obsessed with martial arts. And I kind of realized, like, I'm just trying to become a real life Power Ranger right now. Nothing really ever changed except for my age. I just got older and that's all that happened. When you're a kid, you don't question why you love something, why you want to do something. You just do it. You just love it because it's what you're naturally inclined to do. You don't have to question, like, or think about what other people think about it, if it's rational. None of that matters. And that is ultimately what you kind of have to get back to if you really want to find what you are put on this earth to do, because there's no other way around it. You can cope all you want. You can try and convince yourself of a different path that you know is not for you.
All right, and so as a man, when you embark on this journey to independence and 100% vulnerability with yourself. The reason why independence and 100% vulnerability with yourself is interlinked is because in order for you to actually successfully be an independent man, you need to expose yourself with as much truth as possible. As much truth as possible. This world out there is a very, very dangerous place. All right. For the vast majority of our existence on this world, we never just really and truly shared it in civilizations, cities and towns with other human beings. We shared it with apex predators who are physically completely superior to us in every single type of way. So the idea of being independent, being separate from the herd, it takes such a level of competency, such a level of spirit, and such a level of character and resilience, and perspective and a degree of regulation to be independent and to be the type of person who can truly be 100% autonomous and 100% think for themselves. It takes a great deal of work. You need to access a lot of truth. All right. And so literally, listen to what I'm saying here, because there's many, many people that will tell you this is femininity, this is masculinity, and they're wrong. Listen to what I'm telling you. Fix this into your intellect about what masculinity is. Masculinity is the process of becoming 100% vulnerable with yourself. It's a process. It's a journey. I would love to sit here and tell you guys I'm 100% vulnerable with myself. I feel like I am, but the chances are I'm probably not. Right? Because it's a journey. It's a lifelong journey of continuous growth and development. You will expose yourself to more and more and more and more truth. Right? And so, as I said, these truths are painful. There's nothing harder to do. It's easier for you to go and fight in a war and die in a war than it is to actually sit with the full extent of the truth your unconscious has. And remember, I told you, your ego, what happens is you spend the first portion of your life as a child, when you're younger, as a teenager, as a young adult. You spend the first portion of your life with your ego calibrated on defense. It's in a defensive state. It's been calibrated to completely protect you, right? This is the reason why people can have bad egos. A bad ego isn't a big ego. A big ego is a very good ego. A bad ego is an ego that is really calibrated on protecting you, because when it's really calibrated on protecting you, it's so used to lying to you in order to protect you that you don't even understand the full extent of how your ego is directing truths away from you and turning it into something that you can use to continue regulating yourself. However poorly you are regulated, the fact that you are regulated, it's your ego that is doing that. And so what happens is that if you are stuck in this state for a long time with this rigid, unflexible, underdeveloped ego that is built and designed to protect your heart, then the level of truth you actually have, just how your psyche operates, it's not something that operates in the truth. It's not something that is set up to be able to receive the truth. It's very defensive. It's going to have a lot of coping mechanisms. This means it's going to have a lot of shame, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. It's going to be paradoxical. It's going to be counterintuitive like a woman. All right. And as you get older, even with your adult beliefs, you begin to stack your adult beliefs on top of these, a very childish core beliefs that you created in your childhood. Think about it. You're not supposed to have the same belief systems and core systems that you had as a child, because society and everybody around you, they are literally all invested in lying to you. When you was a child, your ego was completely invested in lying to you. So you're not supposed to have these same core beliefs. At some point as an adult, you need to go back to the drawing board, back into the deeper recesses of your conscious and reevaluate everything. This is the reason why I always tell you guys that in many, many ways, you should put yourself in the bin. You should put yourself in the bin sometimes, because for a lot of you guys, the entirety of who you believe you are is actually bin worthy. It's trash worthy. it's bin worthy, it's trash worthy. You know the ones there, right? You should just put it in the bin. The entirety of it, yes, you would fare off way better starting again. This is what they call ego birth and an ego rebirth. But I mean, ego death and ego rebirth. But you can't kill your ego, so they conceptualize it a bit incorrectly, right? What we want to do, we want to recalibrate our ego. We want to change our ego into something that is not focused on protecting ourselves. We want to change our ego and make it into something that allows us to wear our hearts on our sleeves, that allows us to expose ourselves once again. The reason why I say expose ourselves once again, and when I'm saying that, I mean to life, to the world, to the infinite potentialities and possibilities of reality, is because when we were children, that's what our ego was built on, right? This is the reason why we're so attracted to children and we love children, and children put us into a good mood. Children have aura. They have this degree of vitality and grandiosity that we adults no longer have, and us adults know that we should have. And this is almost like the cognitive dissonance that children gives us. I remember when I had kids, and because they're so similar to me, I'm very self-aware, I'm very vulnerable with myself. I expose myself to as much truth as possible. It's a process, it's a masculine process, as I told you. So because I'm like that, I know myself very well. And so when I see my kids doing stuff, I'm able to really, really link what they get from me, And so when I would have my kids and they were acting and behaving in certain types of ways, I was having this weird feeling because I was being reminded, yeah, that's how I used to be. I remember when I was completely like that. And it made me think, how come I'm not like that anymore? What happened? Right? And every single time that would happen, I'd be led back to an aspect in my consciousness, a patch of darkness in that room for me to look into again. And when I looked into these things, it kind of reminded me of certain passions and certain things that gave me vitality that I definitely should have. So my children really helped me to reintegrate those elements of darkness in that room that I wasn't privy to, because they reminded me of that. Children have this beautiful aura, right? And typically it goes. And it's a very, very sad thing. I've got family as well. I've seen it happen to the children in my family and just younger individuals in general. But what happens is once the socialization and indoctrination of culture is coming to its success, it does such a good job of injecting self-consciousness into us. We become very self-conscious, excessively conscious of the self in a very, very negative way. These things reduce our grandiosity. As we're forced to remove our shining qualities that we need as adults, because we need these qualities in adulthood in order for us to reach our goals, in order for us to influence ourselves and influence the world and, make the most of ourselves on our journey to excellence. We need those qualities, but socialization forces us to integrate those into the shadow. I remember when I was a kid, it's very interesting because I used to get in trouble all the time. I used to be naughty all of the time. And something that some of the teachers would tell my mum quite frequently, and different teachers will tell her this, is that, listen, with Andre, he has amazing qualities that will help him in adulthood. But right now, when he's in school, it's not helping him. And my mum used to hear this in different ways, and I was always in trouble. But she used to basically tell me these qualities and she would laugh, innit? Right? And I would laugh because I would understand what they were saying. The qualities that I had, they were good qualities, right? When I was a kid. But it was not conducive for the school-like mechanical nature that I was in, So even like really thinking for yourself and challenging things that don't make sense and standing firm and stuff like that in your beliefs, and not easily conforming to things, needing an understanding of something before I agree to go along with it. You know, when I don't get this understanding of things, being more than willing to just do up time, serve time. The amount of hours I spent in detentions and isolations in school. And I was so ready to do that time. Andre, do this right now or you're going to go to isolation. And I'm like, oh, it looks like I'm going to isolation. That was the type of kid I was. All right, so the process of adulthood for everybody anyway is to, as I said, go back into their childhood, go back into that dark room, you know, and go and spend some time in the darkness. It's always an element of truth that we've picked up along our way, and we wasn't in a position to process that and make light of it. Okay, and what happens with adults is they begin to get stuck. You know, imagine you're walking forward your whole life and every adult reaches a hurdle they can't overcome. And it's because they don't have the skills and the competencies, the perspective, the information, the character, or the spirit in order to overcome it. And they exhaust all of their faculties and they're still stuck. Now, what happens here is this is when it becomes very, very easy for you to re-enter that dark room and spend some time in the darkness until you're able to leave with some truth that can help you. Right? But most human beings, we're just not able to do it. The more shame we have, the more it feels like we will have a nervous system identity crisis breakdown if we was to accept more truths that will temporarily give us more shame. This is why shame is so evil. It's like a Trojan horse in the system. And when you have too much of it, you're fucked. You are fucked. So if you was to ask me, Andre, do you think everybody is rehabilitable? Then I would say maybe more people than people think is rehabilitable, you know, but there are definitely individuals that aren't because of the sheer levels of shame that they've had into their system. They can't even expose themselves to truths and alchemize those weaknesses into a truth because it will destroy the system completely. All right, and so what happens? And this is another reason why people don't want to expose themselves to themselves. It's because those elements of truth that lay in the darkness in that dark room, when you expose yourself to the truth of it, you're going to be very underdeveloped in whatever area that is. You're going to be a novice, a rookie, a fool, an idiot, right? And individuals who perform masculinity, they can't afford to take those truths out into the world and practice on them because they're going to have a degree of hostility and negativity and rejection from the world. So, for example, I'll give you this one, right? Individuals who, for whatever reason, the ego told them that practicing empathy, right, and things like this is a bad thing for whatever reason, however the belief system constructed itself. What happens is that if they turn 40 years old now, and now they realize that empathy is something to practice, well, then you've had a lifetime of not practicing empathy. You've had a lifetime of it. You can't turn these things on like a switch. This is what is truly, truly sad for individuals who don't integrate the shadow early enough, right? They initially have a false belief, again, created by the ego, telling them that, you know, if they was to peek back into the darkness and make some changes about them, it's like a switch. It's not a switch. It's something you have to practice for many, 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 many years. The empathy that I have, my ability to be able to understand emotion and communicate emotion and all this stuff like that, I've been practicing these things pretty much my entire life. The skills that I have, I've practiced it my entire life. If you come to the realization that humility is actually a good thing, you should practice it, you're going to be really, really shit at it. And you're going to probably have some negative consequences in life because of that. People are going to probably see an element of weakness in you and try to take advantage of that, especially if you presented and carried yourself in a way that has attracted the evil eyes of others. This is why it's so easy. Most of these things have to be done in solitude, number one. And a lot of times, people actually need to move and get themselves out of their environment and put themselves into a fresh, new environment a lot of the time so they can actually begin to practice these qualities. Masculinity is the journey of 100% vulnerability with the self. If you're bored, if your life lacks motivation, it's because you're not integrating the shadow. Because you would always have something to do and something to work on. Because you have so many things that you are shit at. Because you haven't actually processed truth. In order to alchemize these weaknesses, because these truths will actually be a weakness because it's underdeveloped. You've not paid any attention to it. You've not even processed these truths into you. You've not adapted to these truths. It will always be weak. It will always be weak. And then what you do over time is that you begin refining these qualities, these characteristics, until it's a strength. Until it's a strength. You know, you started this life off as a cowardly boy. But through embarking on this masculine journey to independence and 100% vulnerability of yourself, you wouldn't be able to recognize yourself as a kid because you're so fearless now. You've been practicing courage, bravery, and resilience for so long. Now you still feel fear, but to other people, you're fearless. Like, you're not afraid of anything. The more work you've done on yourself, so the more truth you've exposed yourself to, these truths are painful, all right? The full extent of reality is painful. I still come across men all the time, right, who hasn't got over the truth that there are inequalities and injustices in this world, and they're gonna face it. Some men haven't even overcome those truths. Some men really feel butthurt about the cards that they've been dealt in life. They've not been able to simply overcome that truth. Some people are still incredibly butthurt about the things that their mum and dad didn't give them. They haven't exposed themselves to enough truth to overcome that truth. You know, and these things create resentments, right? And resentments, just like shame, they fill your nervous system up. Your nervous system isn't able to just shoulder everything. So in many, many ways, actually, you need to be freeing up your nervous system because its capacity isn't infinite. It's a finite capacity. It can only handle so many things. It can only operate and prioritize so many things. So if your nervous system is full of shame and resentment, well, there's not much space for anything else. And that's the type of creature you're going to become. You're literally going to be this one-dimensional being of shame and resentment. So in order to remove this shame and resentment from you, you need to be exposing yourself to truth, to darkness, all the things that you're unconscious, that lays within your unconscious, and your ego is trying to keep away from you. All right, and so what happens is when you slay these dragons, when you sit with these truths and you marinate yourself in these truths, you know, maybe you need to cry. Maybe you need to just accept some things, take accountability for some things, admit you was wrong, admit you made mistakes, admit you've been spiteful. You was a spiteful one. Admit that it was my fault that I broke up my family, right? Or that thing that I felt so sorry for myself my entire life. I wasn't the victim in that situation. I was actually the perpetrator in that situation, right? You have to kind of like sit with these truths and marinate them until that room has loads of aspects of light in it. The more light in that room, the more masculine you are. That's other people will feel you as masculine. Right? And so when I say to you guys, before you share your vulnerability with others, you need to do the work. You need to share that vulnerability with yourself. Expose yourself to yourself and to the world. And then what you want to do, that's the process. You just want to be integrating the shadow. Sit with more truth. The more truth you sit with, the more competency you become, the more understanding you become, the more positive you become, because you're so much more, you're able to navigate your environment and yourself so much better. The more character you grow, the better your perspectives, the better your psychology. You'll learn how to regulate yourself. You'll learn how to regulate others. You'll learn how to protect yourself truly. And then you'll learn how to protect others. You're going to overcome fear. You're going to overcome anxiety. You're not confused anymore. You're not surprised anymore. You're not suffering from cognitive dissonance anymore. You're not in the state of ambivalence anymore. And then when you sit with enough truth, you'll be able to reorganize your thoughts, your feelings, your motivations, and your fears. You'll be able to align these things that are divided and fighting against each other. Well, when you sit in that dark room, you're gonna be able to unite these things all together and have them work in your favor, having every element in your body working together in one accord, towards one direction, right? Because you are a master of your psyche. The unconscious isn't keeping a whole amount of truth away from you anymore. You've managed to convince your unconscious and your subconscious that you're ready for the truth. You being able to do this, you're ready to convince your ego that it doesn't need to protect yourself anymore. And your ego, you got to convince your ego that you're not a cowardly little boy anymore, and you're ready to expose yourself in this world, right? And then your ego's going to recalibrate itself, because the ego is your best friend. It's your director. You need your ego. Your ego is what makes you do things automatically without thought. It's the first step in whatever direction that you do. In 0.0.0.0.1 second, it's your director. It creates the script. It gives you schemas. So you want to move your ego away from protecting itself and move your ego back into a place of curiosity, back into a place of vitality, grandiosity. You want it to explore the world, make your ego pro-social. You want to make your ego into something that is consistently trying to help you overcome hurdles, overcome pain and suffering. You want to make your ego into something that is always pushing you forwards, propelling you forwards. This is the reason why having a big ego is so essential. The bigger the ego, the more of a role it believes it's playing. And then if you can calibrate it correctly, your ego is going to really be projecting to the egos and the nervous system of other people just how healthy and regulated and refined it is. Right? And then once you convince your ego, then your ego is going to convince your nervous system. And your reality is going to completely change. Your reality is going to completely change. You're not even going to be able to recognize your previous self anymore, because your nervous system is nothing of the same. Right? This nervous system is a competent one now. And it's operating a ship where everything is moving in the same direction. It knows what its job is. It knows what it needs to do. It's not conflicting. It's not being sent conflicting information by things. It's all in one place. It knows how to act and react in situations. It's on your side now. Right? So when you're talking to a honey, you're not sweating. Your breath rate hasn't risen. Your eyes aren't dilating. The nervous system knows. So the nervous system's like, okay, cool, let's get into our inhibited state and be smooth, right? It will know how to act correctly in an interview. It will know how to act correctly when things don't go to plan. You're going to have a flexible ego and a flexible nervous system that is aware that things don't always go to plan. And it's not trying to stick to a script. It's not sensing fear and danger and everything. A lot of your nervous system see everything as a threat, everything as a danger. The main job of the nervous system is to basically react to safety and react to threats. And you guys see everything as a threat and a danger. And of course you will do, because you're living a life to where you're not even operating in reality. Imagine being in reality and you're not even operating in reality. Of course you're going to see everything as a threat and a danger. You're fucked. You're fucked. You don't understand what's going on in your environment. All right? Your nervous system, it picked the wrong one. Your nervous system, if nervous systems can be reincarnated, it come into you and it's like, fuck's sake, man. How long has this brother got, bruv? 50 years? It's going to be a long 50 years, man. Fucking hell, this guy's all over the place, bro. Sending me mixed messages, G. Sending me mixed messages. You're speaking to a girl and your nervous system is reacting like you're speaking to a tiger. And then you yourself, you're asking your nervous system, why do you do this to me? And your nervous system is like, what are you talking about? You see it like a tiger. I don't have eyes, G. I don't have eyes. Well, it does have eyes, innit? Your central nervous system does. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's you. Look at you. You think you're so afraid of this woman. You're sending me signals like it's a tiger, and I don't know what to say to you, right? So I don't know. You get performance anxiety, so when it's time to perform, all of a sudden you can't perform. Like, you're all over the place. You're conflicted. You're all over the place, and you're conflicted. All right. So that's the process of vulnerability, and that's what the process of masculinity is, because a woman is unable to provide herself with the security in order for her to actually canvas that dark room. And she doesn't even have much of an incentive or a motivation to do it, because she's born into a world that lies to her, and she prefers to lie to herself in order to achieve homeostasis, in order for her to achieve emotional regulation. That's just her goal. All right. So in many, many ways, the truth really dysregulates the woman. You know, we in societies, we protect our women, and we don't expose our women to the full extent of the truth. So what happens is that in order to regulate her behavior, we do that through the process of shame, and in order to add vitality to the woman, because she's unable to be confident in who she is and stuff, because she doesn't overcome pain and suffering. We protect her from pain and suffering. So in order to replace the vitality of confidence, we instill entitlements and delusion to make her feel good, to give her energy. All right, so that woman is not trying to go into the dark recesses of her room. All right, truth really dysregulates her. And this is why I've put in my videos before the reason why the woman is attracted to a safe space, because the extra security that you provide, because a woman outsources her security and everything else onto other people, but security is really outsourced onto a man, direction and leadership is outsourced onto a man. You're actually able to give her that extra security, that extra motivation, and the extra incentive for her to be vulnerable with herself, because she's going to reach a hurdle with a man to where she's unable to get the outcomes that she wants with a man. Right, and it's always going to come down to her lack of vulnerability she exposes herself to, the lack of truth she exposes herself to. So she'll be forced to go back into that room with the security the man provides in order to be vulnerable with herself enough that you as the man is satisfied with how she's conducting herself, how she's communicating to you, how she's reacting to you, how she reacts to bad news, how she reacts when she doesn't get what she wants, how she reacts when she really wants something. Right, you teach her to be able to do that, but you can't teach her and provide a safe space for her if you yourself exist in a room full of darkness with few specks of light in there. If that makes sense, fellas, right? I hope that makes sense to you. That's what it is. That's what exposing yourself is to, all right? Making the unconscious conscious, making the unconscious conscious. That's a process of masculinity. Your strength, your power, all of the good stuff that you don't currently have, you will be able to get these things for yourself through this process. That's where the truth lays. That's where the truth lays. And it's a process. It's something that you dedicate your life to. Something you dedicate your life to. You know, like a samurai. Samurai used to dedicate his life to the sword and continuously perfect simple, like one move attacks. The martial artist, he dedicates his life to an art form, and he's perfecting the same leg kick for 20 years. Right? It's a process that you're continuously doing, because you understand that your superpowers is in the shadow. It's not external. Your superpowers lay in the shadow. All you need to do is reintegrate the shadow. It's going to be a painful process. And when you do reintegrate these qualities into you, it's going to be at a novice level. It's going to be crap. You're going to have to level these things up. As you're trying to make these changes and level these things up, you're going to have tests. Do you continue on this journey, or do you reintegrate it back into the shadow? That is the difference between a masculine man and a man who performs masculinity. Because a man who doesn't reintegrate the shadow, he will act as if he's a man who has reintegrated the shadow. Watch my previous videos so you can get further expansion upon this. My last couple of videos has all been around vulnerability and exposing yourself to yourself. I've been getting comments telling me that, I'm not being clear on what it is. I hope this is clear on what it is. I hope it is. It's quite clear, no? Well, if it's not, watch my other videos. If you need more, you're going to have to sign up for one-on-one coaching, because if still you don't know how to be vulnerable with yourself from watching my videos, it's because your ego is really strong. Your ego is really strong, to you anyway. It is really invested in blinding you to what we're talking about. That's why you don't understand it. You're like, what do you mean? It's like, wow, the ego is strong in you, innit? The ego's like, huh? Nah, nigga, we don't do that round here. The ego's like, we don't do that round here. Don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Anyway, guys, love you so much. Leave a like, leave a comment, sign up for one-on-one coaching. Please continue to support the page. Actually, pause on the one-on-one coaching, but send me emails anyway. Everybody that I haven't replied to in my email, I'm going to get back to you. I'm just working through my WhatsApp, and then I'm going to work through my email again and give you the time that you guys deserve. Love you guys so much. Actually, one more thing, because let me respond to another comment. Okay, so I think I had 2 comments basically to where they seen a contradiction in me saying about how the masculine is emotional, but then at the same time, being emotional is a bad thing. It's a feminine thing, and so just to clear that up, all right? All human beings are emotional. We're all emotional. The woman is more emotional than the man naturally, in certain types of ways, just simply because the woman will always choose her emotions over her values, and this is just not the same thing as a man, but and it's so much more easier for you to find a man who is driven by his values over his emotions. We're just different psychology. But what I'm trying to explain to you guys is, once you've done this process of exposing yourself to yourself, working on everything, learning how to regulate yourself, understanding your emotions, listening into it, understanding what your emotions are trying to tell you, what it's trying to communicate to you, all right? When you get very vulnerable with yourself and you really begin to master this process, you're still going to have emotions. And powerful individuals express themselves freely, right? And so the masculine expresses his emotions freely. When the masculine is angry or whatever, and he expresses himself in certain types of ways, if he's actually masculine and he's exposed himself to himself and he's embarked on a masculine journey to independence and 100% vulnerability to himself, then he knows it's not a lack of self-control. He's expressing his emotions. Not everybody is afraid to express anger. Right? Not everybody is afraid to express displeasure. All right? And so depending on when it makes sense for him, when he wants to express his emotions freely, he will. And maybe he always expresses his emotions freely. But then at the same time, it's not always smart to express your emotions freely. Sometimes you have to use instrumental rationality and know when to practice self-control in order, because the masculine is always working toward a goal. He's always trying to move towards something. All right. And so expressing his emotions freely, if he does that and it's going to result in him not achieving the things that he wants for himself, the outcomes he wants for himself, then he's not going to do it. And if he does it, then that reflects a lack of self-control, a lack of discipline. Right? Does that make sense? But you should don't think to yourself that a masculine man is just somebody who is like a pacifist or something. Of course not. Like, I have my disciplines, I have my structures, I have my values, and if you go against my values, you're probably going to feel my wrath. I give people chances as well. So for me, it might be like 3 strikes and you're out, right? To where I'll be fair, I'll be understanding. But then if you really take the piss, you cross my boundaries, I'm going to have to destroy you and eliminate you and obliterate you. Does that make sense? Doesn't mean I'm emotional because I've decided to chop your head off. That doesn't mean I'm emotional. It just means you've crossed my values and now I'm going to seek vengeance on you. Right? I'm vulnerable with myself enough to give myself what it needs. In a previous video, I told you guys that I allow myself to be sensitive. There's loads of things and truths that I expose myself to, and I expose myself to the truth of my sensitivities and the things that I'm sensitive with. And when I did that, I made few tweaks, and I realized, actually, do you know what? I actually like being sensitive. I think I'm going to remain sensitive. My ego and my nervous system was like, okay, cool, brilliant. I think I agree with you as well. Yeah, 100%. My nervous system was like, no, defend me, Andre. I want you to defend me. All right. So before I start getting dysregulated and stuff like that, if somebody is like crossing our boundaries or taking a piss or disrespecting us, can you just destroy them so it doesn't start affecting me? And I'm like, okay, yeah. Their fault. Right? I've been vulnerable with myself enough to understand that not everything is my responsibility and my duty. So if you piss me off, if you want to go to war with me, that's your problem now, isn't it? It's not my problem. I'm not going to shoulder that. You're going to have to shoulder the pain, shoulder the loss. I'm going to have to obliterate you now. Right? And so that's what vulnerability is. Just be vulnerable with yourself and you'll know how to function. You'll know what program you're trying to run. All right? If you think for 1 second that I'm trying to move towards perfection, no, I'm not. I'm trying to reach my goals. I'm trying to have the characteristics and make myself into somebody who's able to create the heaven that I want to create for myself and my loved ones. All right? So if you think for 2 seconds that I'm going to make myself small for you, then you're wrong. Why would I do that? I'm going to make myself big as possible. I'm going to mansplain. I'm going to take up as much space as possible. If you feel uncomfortable by me, that's your problem. If you are intimidated by me, that's your problem. Why is that my problem? Right? I make sure that I can communicate very, very well. I make sure that I'm always mindful and composed and I'm thinking about how I'm communicating and coming across. So when I do that to a good job and you still have a misunderstanding, that's your problem. That's your problem. You have much work to do, my friend. Guys, love you guys. See you in the next one.